Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to another episode of Bay to Bay Ball. I'm your host, Justin Theriot. It's an exciting episode today for the most part. Obviously, the NBA trade deadline has come and gone with just so many wild things. Last time I was on here, we talked about, the Mavericks should trade for a center with the injuries that were going on over there. They certainly did that. Talked about De'Aaron Fox for obviously going to the Spurs. That happened. And then Jimmy Butler and what was going to happen with that doesn't end up in Phoenix. We got a lot to get through. And before we get to that stuff, keeping with the theme of this podcast, we're going to talk about Rhode Island basketball. I'm wearing the t-shirt today, Rhode Island men's basketball. No, I was not given this shirt as a paid Twitter account to boost interactions on Twitter. For some reason, that's a thing happening right now. I'm not going to name names, but certain people know what I'm talking about. And man, what a baseless, unfounded, stupid claim to make. But thus is the nature of Twitter in today's day and age. I mean, yeah, wow, what a thing to come out and say is happening. But that's besides the point. What I shouldn't really be smiling so much because I'm wearing the t-shirt and repping a brand that just had an absolutely embarrassing loss at Fordham on Wednesday. It was the return of Fordham's coach, Keith Ergo. And boy, did they play energized. Came out and got a 15-point lead over Rhode Island. Another just absolutely dreadful start for Rhode Island. Rhode Island was lucky that it was only a 15-point game at that point. They were continuously going underneath screens. And at that point, Fordham was 1 of 7 from three. Just luck of the draw. Sort of how when they beat Charleston, Charleston started the game 0 of 16 from three. Like stuff like that happens. And Rhode Island really struggled to defend the three early on in the season. And it's sort of come back, and now I think they've sort of gotten lucky, honestly, that teams just haven't shot well against them. And now you might say, well, how can they not be good at defending the three, but teams don't shoot well against them? I think it's shooting luck. I mean, if you watch the games against Rhode Island and you see these teams chucking, there's a reason they're chucking up so many threes against Rhode Island. It's because they're able to. You are taught as a guard even as a forward, in today's game of basketball, you are a capable three-point shooter. Your big is going to set the screen, or your power forward, your small forward, whomever, maybe even a guard is going to set the screen. You're going to, go over the top. And if the defender goes under the screen, you shoot. You have an open look. Guys are practicing now with the screener, in proximity to them, because that's the only guy that's defending the three on that play. Rhode Island doesn't make an adjustment to it. Fordham ends up going 4 for their next 4 from 3, and then they ended up finishing the game, or at one point in the game, first half, I can't remember, going 0 for their next 8. So Rhode Island was just getting lucky on that shooting luck. But besides the shooting, I mean, rebounding was an issue. Rhode Island was out-rebounded, specifically just allowing 6 more offensive rebounds. They allowed 14 offensive rebounds. And I don't know how well Fordham has rebounded on the offensive glass all season, but I would assume not that great given their record and the size that they have. I think what you saw a lot of from Rhode Island, even from their better rebounders, was guys, one, not marking and boxing out guys, which is just so frustrating to watch. You gotta box out. You just have to box out. I think if they don't spend the whole, Thursday, Friday practicing boxing out, then what are we doing? Because I just think it was sort of unwatchable to a certain point with the non-boxing out. And then it feels just like not a lot of guys are in there on rebounds. I mean, you have 3 guys that, they're getting back on defense, which I don't hate, but at the same time, it feels like if someone like David Green isn't in there getting rebounds, then the rebounding's not good at all for this team, and that's frustrating because you employ a 7-footer. Javid Fuchs, in my opinion, is a fantastic rebounder. I think he had 9 or 8 in this game, but he's not perfect. He's a 6'9", 6'8" forward. That's not uber bouncy or uber freak athlete. He's definitely an athlete. He's big and he's strong and can throw it down. He's a great rebounder. But at the same time, he struggles to box people. Not even to box him out, to remember to box him out. It feels like And David Green plays the role of stretch 4, stretch 3, just normal 3. And so it makes sense he's not in there getting rebounds. I remember earlier in the season at a press conference, Archie Miller talked about the team needed to be better on the offensive glass, preventing offensive rebounds, getting their own offensive rebounds. And the next game they did that, and David Green had a ton. I think he had 14 rebounds that game. And he only had 3 threes, and I think he made all 3, which is really nice. But you want David Green to be around that mark. You want him to be around 3 threes made or 2 threes made. And he's not going to get to that if he's only taking 3 attempts a game. Now, you're lucky that he made all 3 that game. Talking about shooting luck, like that is shooting luck. He's a talented player, but there's luck involved in a game like basketball. And obviously, he's not going to. You have to pick. Clearly, you have to pick between one or the other. Is David Green going to be a guy that you're kicking it out to the corner and he's going to knock down the 3 at the top of the key or in that corner? Or is he going to be in there rebounding more often than not? And I just think that they've had a really hard time kind of figuring out which side to pick on that. And depending on which side they pick, you're now lacking 3-point shooting or you're lacking rebounding. I just, again, assist to turnover ratio sucks. It blows. I didn't think the turnovers were awful this game. Only 11 is not that bad when you think about some of the games this team has had. But at the same time, this is now the 4th or 5th game in a row where they have either more turnovers than assists or the same amount as assists to turnovers. They've been below the mark that Miller wants them to be at. Miller has said he wants them to be at 16 to 17 assists a game, and they haven't been reaching that. And when they do reach that many, they're still turning it over just as much. I don't think it's someone like Sebastian Thomas. Thomas had 2 moments in this game that just drove me crazy. Just like he's just trying to be too flashy. There was one play where it was him and I think it was Jaden House on the break, and he went with the behind the back, and you thought maybe, okay, is he going to try and lay this up or what is he doing? Because by the time he's got the ball back available to move, because he's not moving it behind his back, he's already in the chest of the defender underneath the basket. And then he loses the ball, and then Jaden House picks up his 3rd foul trying to get the ball back. So what are we doing? And then there was another just boneheaded play from Bassie. And I'm not gonna sit here and say we need to hold him more accountable, because if there's any player that has played at Rhode Island during the Archie Miller tenure that it's excusable to not play decent defense. It's excusable to not get back quickly or pick up a guy. It's excusable to not be in there rebounding, despite the fact that Sebastian Thomas appears to be one of the better rebounders on this team, somehow sort of in that Peyton Pritchard, I'm going to sneak in here and grab this rebound beneath your nose kind of rebounder. It's excusable. He is carrying the offense every single game. He carries the offense. It's 20 points after 20 points after 20 points. At one point, he had the longest stretch in Division I basketball for most 20-point games in a row. I think it was an 8 or 7 or something like that. Most games in a row with 20 points. And he could have gotten it or could have kept that streak alive had he not missed free throws at the end of that VCU game. And speaking of free throws, what a ridiculous, it almost gets lost in the story of the game for Rhode Island. This team shot 18 of 18 on free throws. 18 of 18 as a team. You could ask Steph Curry. You could ask Kyrie. You could ask James Harden. You could ask Luka. You could ask all these people. Go even back in time, Bob Cousy. Ask those people to shoot 18 free throws in a row in a game-like environment. The odds that they hit all 18 are so incredibly, astronomically low. It's actually bewildering that this team made that many free throws in a row only for one of their best free throw shooters, Sebastian Thomas, to miss the last one the team takes. It leaves the game. It's just a 1-point game because it was the first of a 1-and-1 due to the bonus. He misses it, so they don't get the second free throw. Of course, it's rebounded by Fordham. They call a timeout, inbound it with 9 seconds to go, and here's where I lost it. They call a timeout. They let a ton of time run off. Call timeout. It seemed like Ergo was trying to call timeout sooner. They didn't give it to him. So, you're Archie Miller. What are you telling your guys in that huddle? I need to know, because how do you allow that switch? How do you allow Jafet? I don't. Jafet, I would assume is how you say his first name, Mador. Mador had averaged 17 and a half points over the last 3 games or so coming into that one. He's a guard, not that big. He's very fast. How do you allow him so easily to get switched on to David Fuchs? How? How? David is a fantastic interior defender, and he's not awful on the perimeter for his size. But you make him come up, right? They're big. As you'd expect, comes up and sets that screen. Sebastian gets lost on the screen. Great screen by Zona on that play. Now, I'm not a coach. I've never coached. Hell, I've never even played organized basketball, and that's one of my biggest regrets. I wish I did growing up. But I've watched enough ball over the last couple of years to think, why don't you stick David Green on that guy? David Green stands at 6'7", maybe 6'8" in shoes. Why is he not stuck on that guy? Zona's not crazy big. You could have stuck, and it's not like David is much bigger than David. You could have stuck him on Zona. Instead, you don't. So now it's David Fuchs who they just let it happen. They just let this switch happen. No attempt to rotate or anything. They just let him get stuck on a guard. And he gives him all the space in the world. Very clearly doesn't want to foul. He chases him with his hands up. If you're watching the video version, I'm hoping on this podcast I'm able to extract the audio. I'm using a new software, so on Spotify you might not be able to see this. Who knows? Maybe you will. But he's trailing him with his arms up like this. He doesn't want to foul. It's so clear he doesn't want to foul him. He lets him get up, eyes to the rim, lays it up, and Mador misses. For just a split second, you think, wow, there's no way Rhode Island just somehow allowed that play to happen, allowed that look at the rim when you're only up 1 point with the clock ticking down. There's no way you just allowed that look and then got bailed out. Only for nobody on Rhode Island to pick up Zona. And Zona does the right thing. He's coached up well by Keith Ergo, who's not going to speak on his coaching, but I don't know if he'll be back next year. But Zona rolls, which is what it is. It's pick and roll. That is the play. Zona is not a 3-point threat, so he is rolling. You only need 2 points, so the screener is rolling to the basket. Nobody picks him up. David is sitting beneath the basket, waiting for the ball to fall. He's not looking around him, looking for someone to box out. No, he is just watching the ball. Zona very easily, uncontested. No one's elbowing him. No one's getting in his way. No, nothing. Rolls right to the rim, grabs the rebound, and puts it back up. No questions asked. Too easy. And that's game. You inbound it to Thomas. He gets his half-court shot off. Maybe he could have taken another 2 steps, but it probably would have been more contested. Doesn't fall. Rhode Island loses 80-79. What are you doing? How do you not pick up Zona? How do you give Mador, a guy who's averaging nearly 18 points over the last couple of games, a look that easily? Why do you allow Fuchs, your biggest, slowest player on the floor, to get switched onto a guard on the final play of the game? You don't bring help defense. You just let it happen. Like, how does that happen? And now, this is a game off a break. You just beat UMass. You're lucky to have beaten UMass because it's the same script in this game. They, once again, like every game they've played this season, or at least in the A-10 part of the season, the other team comes out better than Rhode Island. Rhode Island has to then fight their way back, and they do. They go from down 15 to up 6 late. They fight all the way back. They close out the first half strong. They come out strong in the second half per usual. It is the exact same script almost every game, and to a T to the UMass script. The exact same thing. Come out slow. Get beat. Then you fight your way back. Finish the half strong. Then you come out even better in the second half. Then you build up this lead. And in the final, this time instead of the last 14 minutes, the final 5 minutes, you totally, utterly collapse. The offense isn't there. The defense isn't there. Boneheaded mistakes. No boxing out. Turnover. It's just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. As a writer, I try to be unbiased and give props where it is due for a team like Fordham, who has struggled this season mightily. But yet, despite the fact that they're 3-7 in conference play, they sit 1 game back of Rhode Island, who owns the number 9 seed, and the 9 seed marks the lowest you can be and get a bye. So Fordham, who has been so awful, started conference play 0 of 6, is now one game back of a bye. And Rhode Island, who started just their regular season 9-0 and could have been 10-0 had it not been for a point-blank missed putback and 21 turnovers and 7 assists. They could have been 10-0. You know, they're sitting here at 4-6. And now, for Rhode Island, the expectations coming into the season for me, I thought it would be a good year if they got to 20 wins. You want to be middle of the pack in the A10, 6 seed, 5 seed. I think that's good. 7 seed, you can chalk it up to a good A10. That's okay. Anything lower than that, it's like, okay, well, how did you end up here? Is there context involved or were you just bad? Then it'd be a little disappointing. But regardless, based on how weak I perceived the non-conference schedule to be, despite the fact that people thought I was dumb for it and called me a blank moron for it, I was right. It's not about me being right or wrong. It's the facts. It is a literal fact that you could have looked at before the season started that Rhode Island, and by the end of the non-conference, had the 10th easiest non-conference schedule in America, despite the fact that they played a Big East school in Providence, which is not on anybody for scheduling that. That is just a fixture, so nobody deserves credit for that game being scheduled. You played Charleston, who I don't know how good they are right now, but they were expected to be better. Yale is pretty darn good. Central Connecticut State is better than what we thought they were going to be. Temple is better than what we thought they were going to be. And I might be missing another team or two, but you got lucky that some of those teams on the schedule were better than you thought they were going to be, and you still had a bottom 10 strength of schedule in the non-conference portion of the season. With all of that being said, you got to get to 20 wins, which means you have to finish 5-3 over these next 8 games, and that's not going to happen. You play George Mason tomorrow in Fairfax, so probably going to be an L. Then you play Dayton and St. Louis and St. Bonaventure. Those are 4 losses, guaranteed pretty much. If they win any of those, it's a huge victory for just the program. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think Archie Miller, this and that. I think there's a lot of logistics behind it. He's done a great job recruiting. I'm really, really, really curious to see what he does in the portal with Bassey and House and Green and Brown all going at the end of the year. I'm very curious to see what the team looks like next year, what he can do in the portal with the allocated budget that they have right now. But dude, they got to box out. They got to box out. They have to be better on defense. They have to be more aware. Maybe it's just the coaching. I don't know, but it was a frustrating loss. Very clearly, you can hear it in my voice. Yeah, just a ridiculous, frustrating loss for Rhode Island. Women's team picked up another win. I didn't get to watch this one, but it sounded like the ending of the game was pretty weird. Referees, of course, Atlantic 10 referees sort of meddling and everything. But another really good win for the women's team. They're now up to 500 for the first time since Thanksgiving when they fell to 500. I think that was a Cancun challenge, so that would have been Iowa. When they lost to Iowa, blowing it in the fourth quarter, unfortunately, they're back up to that 500 mark, and they're 7-4 in conference, which is just awesome. Now they have Dayton tomorrow, and I'm blessed enough to be on the broadcast with that one on ESPN Plus with the wonderful Aiden Garvey. That one will be at 1 p.m. And before that, I'll actually be at the URI Coaches Invitational for the track and field team. I know this is a strictly basketball podcast, but if you know me, I got to give a quick shout out to the URI men's track team. Last week was a really successful week for their oval guys. Only sent 6 competitors up to the BU Terrier Classic. I know it's named after somebody. I forget who that is. We saw Jarrett Young, a guy who, I don't know if they do, but if they do Hall of Fame for Atlantic 10 track and field, he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. He's got 8 rings, I'm pretty sure, from indoor and outdoor conference championships. I think he's probably been the number 1 seed in the 400 every year. He set so many records. Regardless, another great weekend for Jarrett Young. He now owns the 1 seed in the Atlantic 10 for the 400 meter. And then, unsurprisingly so, the hired assassin, Joe Dos Reese, I think is how you say it. He had another great mile, another top 5 entry, to the mile record book for Rhode Island. So now he has 3 of the top 5 times in the indoor mile ever. I think it's Madden Jackson or Maddox Jackson. I think that's his name. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. He's a freshman, and his second mile ever got a top 10 entry. So great job on the mile for that team. Tomorrow, like I just said, they're gonna have the coaches invitational. I was told that with the way Mackle Fieldhouse, the condition it's in now, to expect the short distance sprinters to have good days, field players, field athletes to have good days. Don't really expect much from distance runners, and if you do see something from a distance runner, get excited because that means they perform well on a not so great playing service. But moving on from Rhode Island related topics, it is what we're here to talk about, the NBA trade deadline. Laying back on the couch now. What do we do first? I think we do the Luka trade first. I think that's just the obvious one. I'm actually going to write an opinion piece on some of these trades for the Good 5 Cent Cigar, which is exciting. Shout out Ryan Palillo, our awesome arts and culture editor, who's given me the space to do that. We'll start with Luka AD. You've probably heard a million people talk about it already, so I'll keep it brief. What is it like? What? I mean, like what? I'm trying to go to bed and I go into shock, right? I mean, what could be the reason behind Dallas sending Luka away? He could be doing. I mean, you've heard people say he could be doing hard drugs in the locker room, and I don't think you should send him away. I've heard plenty of conspiracy theories. I think the one that I like the most is that the Dallas Mavericks, their new ownership group, who stinks. Please do your research on them. Oh my God, they are stinky people. So it's no longer Mark Cuban. So don't be blaming him. They own a ton of casinos, and I mean mega casinos in Vegas. Rumor has it, conspiracy theorists have it, they're doing this on purpose, right? You can chalk it up to a basketball move, but then you turn around and say, hey, if you bought tickets and you're so upset about this trade, then just give them back to us and we'll give you a full refund. When does a team do that? It almost feels like they're very, very, very intentionally trying to get people to care less and less about their team in the Dallas area. That way they'll have an excuse to, move the team to Las Vegas, which I would hate. I think that'd be bad for basketball. But at the same time, if they move a franchise like the Dallas Mavericks into Vegas, that means that when they add those two new expansion teams on the way, one is already guaranteed to go to Seattle, I feel like, and the other one I feel like is guaranteed to go to Vegas. Excuse me. One goes to Vegas, one goes to Seattle. You're probably going to take two teams out west, Pelicans and Grizzlies, or Pelicans and Timberwolves, and move them to the east. I think that's a good idea. Pelicans could probably still be a play-in team in the east despite their record this year. I would just rather see, a new city get a team rather than Vegas. So if you had moved Dallas the Mavericks to Vegas, then you could make a new expansion team somewhere else. Maybe you just put them in Dallas again. Probably not, but who knows? To the actual trade for the Mavericks, I think you can't. I was talking about it in the barbershop earlier. You can't. It's hard to say they won because you never want to. I don't want to use the word win when you give away Luka Doncic, but at the same time, you are giving away. And we're gonna put this very dumbly. We're gonna dumb it down. You're giving away, if we look exclusively at the defensive side of the floor, a negative, like a double negative defender for a double positive defender. Okay, your defense is going to be way better. You're going to be able to run lineups with Gafford and AD and Lively. It's going to look really good defensively for Dallas, but obviously the offense takes a huge step back. I don't really want to rely on Kyrie to give me all that offense just because in the past he hasn't seen the number one defender. It's been Luka seeing the number one defender. So now you're putting a number one defender on Kyrie despite the fact that he's 32 years old and has a bulging disc in his back right now. And then you're going to ask Klay Thompson to turn back the clock 5 years or so. And he did the other night against the Celtics, but you can't expect him to do that, in a playoff setting with, the intensity turned up. I like that they went out and got Caleb Martin for better defense. I like the Max Christie ad in the AD trade. I think Max Christie is a good player. PJ Washington is good. And Spencer Dinwiddie. So, that's your offense, plus AD. Garrett Lively, I really don't know what sort of offensive game you're going to get from him without Luka there. And that's why we'll get to the Lakers in a second with their offense. I just don't know offensively for the Mavericks if this is a good enough offense to win in the postseason. It's definitely a good enough defense to win a championship, in my opinion. I mean, AD has anchored a championship winning defense. Gafford has anchored a defense that went to the finals last year. PJ Washington played really good in the finals in the postseason last year. It's just interesting, right? It really is. Um, like yeah, basketball wise, like I think their roster, as funny as it is to say that despite the fact that they gave up Luka and the other team has LeBron, I do think that the Mavericks have a better roster, and I think that's just because the roster before Nico Harrison ruined his reputation as a GM, he was seen as a good GM. I mean, they went out and they, like I just said, they got Gafford, they got PJ Washington, they went out and got Martin for Grimes, which I thought was a decent deal or not really a bad one. You brought back Spencer Dinwiddie for that, offensive punch off the bench. And I'm definitely forgetting some other people, but and Najee Marshall too. That's a good ad. Plenty of good ads to that team. The team has it has real wings, it has real wing depth, it has real guards, it has real scoring guards, and it has real bigs, like probably the best big room in the league. For the Lakers, they don't really have a roster that's constructed in that manner, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that you just gave up your defensive anchor, and you didn't really expect it. Obviously, they kind of it's LA, so there's a little bit of championship expectations, but I don't think Pelinka put together this roster this season with the understanding that they were going to go compete for a finals. I don't think that was his expectations coming into the season. So going from the Mavericks, so I'm not going to grade these trades, but that's my thought. Dumbest trade ever. Worst trade of the modern era. Which is a shame to say because Anthony Davis is a borderline top 10 player in the NBA, if not top 10 player in the NBA. Max Christie to me is a promising young player who's really emerged onto the scene this season. I thought that was something that JJ Redick had done really well as a coach, was get Max Christie to burst the way he has this year. But still, you just don't trade away Luka Doncic. You just don't. I mean, just not enough words in the world to describe how idiotic and pathetic that move is. And then to add insult to injury with the defense wins championships. And then I thought the scummiest thing he did the whole time was to walk out on Jason Kidd in the press conference after he left Jason Kidd in the dark on this trade. And also the reports that Pelinka and him had been talking about this for months. The owners thought it was a joke. Pelinka thought it was a joke at first. And then apparently that, there was multiple firsts, including that 2031 first-round pick on the table, plus don't connect. And somehow Pelinka was able to talk down from that. Oh my God. I mean, think about how many firsts. Didn't Gobert command 5 firsts or 4 firsts? Didn't Donovan Mitchell command 4 or 5 firsts? Mikal Bridges commanded 5 firsts. How do you give up 1 first-round pick for Luka? Oh my gosh. That's the worst part about all this. 1 first-round pick. 1. And it's going to be useless. They're going to have Luka. Ugh. Oh my God. Now for the Lakers, I was going to do this chronologically. And I don't think I even said that word right. And I still will as I sit up from this couch. I got a new setup today for those watching on the video. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it to be an MP4 file only on Spotify, but downstairs in the basement again, got a different angle on the camera. Still got the Christmas decorations up. This beautiful picture of the snowplow game back in '82 when the Patriots beat the Dolphins, and then an amazing Frank Gore signed jersey. All this belongs to my brother. Some beautiful sports memorabilia in the background today. So shout out Matt. So like I said, I was going to do it chronologically, but since we're on the topic of the Lakers, we'll talk about the Mark Williams trade. So this one happened at the very end of the deadline, it felt like, and there was a lot of people in my sphere talking about how they didn't really like it, they didn't understand it, why give up Dalton Connect. I've had people, there's just one kid, I don't want to name names, I doubt he listens to this. He and I have had just a handful of conversations, but both of them involved Dalton Connect in one way or another. And he told me that he thought Dalton Connect was the steal of the draft. And now, this isn't to bash Dalton Connect, but I just can't. You cannot be a 23-year-old rookie and be a steal, one, unless you're amazing immediately. And two, you can't be the steal when Jalen Wells exists. Jalen Wells is a top 3 candidate in Rookie of the Year. Despite the fact that Jalen Wells is one of the worst jump shooting players in the NBA this season. This is the worst he's ever going to be. And he's still top 3 in Rookie of the Year because he's a fantastic defender. In fact, Jalen Wells is so good, the Grizzlies traded away Marcus Smart. Getting ahead of myself, reel it back into the Lakers. Don't Connect is older than Mark Williams. Isn't that a... He is older than Mark Williams. And Mark Williams is in his 3rd year. What? And then you give up the 2031 first. Didn't like that. But I think, good on the Hornets for probably standing strong and saying, hey, I'm going to give you this very young, promising center who's got a couple of issues we'll talk about. But you're giving the Lakers what they need. I mean, they needed a center. They needed it. If they had left the deadline with no center, they're dead in the water. They are. I mean, you'd be running DFS at center for the rest of the year. They would be dead. So they needed this center. Now, I wish they got robbed for my own personal interest. Big Robert Williams fan. Would have loved to see him on a contending team. But so they go out and get Mark Williams. Don't Connect for Mark Williams as a straight-up swap would have been really interesting. But Connect is older by a good handful of months. Despite the fact that, like I mentioned, Williams has been in the league much longer. Who did they also give up? They weren't able to get off Gabe Vincent, which I thought was hilarious. Who did they give up? I'm going to have to check my phone. They gave up... sorry, I got distracted by a notification. Where's my phone? Okay, my phone. Where's this page? So who did they give up? It's in here somewhere. Who did they give up besides? Man, I should have had this stuff prepared. I got to be like like a bottom 2 podcaster ever. Not having this sort of stuff prepared for y'all. Okay, yeah, Cam Reddish. Man. Hey, J. Cole's got a couple bars about Cam Reddish. I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for Cam Reddish. But if you can give up Cam Reddish for Mark Williams, I'm doing that in a heartbeat. Oh my God. So if it had just been Cam Reddish and Don't Connect for Mark Williams, would have been a steal for the Lakers. Obviously, Hornets seem to have a little bit of a smarter front office nowadays. They don't let that happen, and they convinced the Lakers to give them that first round pick. And now it feels like a little bit of overpay at first. Your first round pick, who hasn't been awful, and Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish, who I don't know where he would have really fit in with Luka coming in. Maybe he would have played some 3-4 with DFS at the 5. I don't know. But you get rid of him, and you bring in Mark Williams. And now Mark Williams is probably the best center that they could have gotten. Well, I guess anybody's available nowadays in this era of Luka's being traded. But can you think of a better guy? If you know Mark Williams, if you've watched Hornets basketball, which I don't think many of us have, if you know him though, you know he's a great offensive pairing with Luka and LeBron. He's a good lob finisher, stands at 7'2", moves his feet really well. Good touch, it feels like. Athletic for his size. I mean, he's perfect for Luka. He's gonna throw down an incredible amount of lobs. He's gonna set some good screens, and he's got a ton of concerns. Right? Only played 85 games through 3 years. So can he stay healthy? Who knows? But I think the only big you could have traded for that wasn't going to give you injury concerns is Walker Kessler, and Kessler probably would have also costed that first. And Kessler is so freaking boring. I don't even know if he starts half the time for the Jazz, and I know he didn't start for them for most of last season. And he's a great anchor, but that's all he is. That's all Kessler provides. He has no offensive bag to any degree. I might be just as competent as him on the offensive side if I was that tall. Like I said, he's great defensively, and now that's where he differs from Mark Williams. Because I didn't really know this, but Mark Williams is not good defensively, at least per the metrics. He's like bottom 5 percentile in guys. I'm trying to figure out what it was, but I know that guys shoot like way better at the rim against Mark Williams than they do for their season averages, which is not a good sign when you're 7-2. He's not good in space. He, often just makes silly mistakes or gets blown by smaller guards. I know I said he moves well for his size, but that's more when he's controlling the pace and he has the ball. When he doesn't, he's getting blown by. His hands aren't very active at all. He can block shots, but that's more so because of his size more than anything. Not like he's some shot blocking artist like Robert Williams is. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. You have spent the last 3 years playing for the Charlotte Hornets. Guys from your rookie class and guys that are coming in after you or the year before you, they're getting arrested on DUIs. They're beating their girlfriends and being allowed to play, which is just the worst part about the NBA, in my opinion. And you all know who I'm talking about. Oh, man. Every time I even think about him, I like go on a little – I just hate him. Right, so DUIs, gambling, LaMelo just doing LaMelo things. I mean, not that he's like a criminal unless you want to give him federal charges for the amount of times he's run a red light. Or maybe he ran over that kid's foot one time. I don't know if that was true or not. But you and I both know the culture in Charlotte is just disgusting. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the show Baddies. I've seen bits and pieces of it from my girlfriend and her friends. I feel like it's like Baddies. Like it's just a bunch of people yelling and being stupid. Like that's what the Hornets feel like. And now I like Charles Lee, their new head coach, coming over from the Celtics. I feel like they're going to have a better culture over time as they kind of weed out some of these idiots in that locker room. But it sucks when you still have the big, glaring guy there. LaMelo's antics off the court aren't much better, and his play style doesn't help with that identity crisis. And I'm definitely forgetting a couple of things. But my point is, I'm going to give Mark Williams the benefit of the doubt when it comes to defense, because how can you play defense when every day that you show up to a game, you know they're going to lose? You know you're going to lose. And if you don't lose, you're either playing a really bad team or it's a miracle, right? The rest of your team doesn't play defense. They're asking so much of you, especially since they trade Nick Richards. I mean, nobody plays defense in the Hornets. They really don't. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. I think it was a good move by the Lakers. Don't love giving up the 2031 unprotected, but you hope that in, 6 years from now, you still have Luka. Maybe you still have Mark Williams. Maybe you have some other guys, on that team that you signed in free agency, and giving up that pick doesn't really matter because you're able to just be a really good team. And who cares that the Hornets have your 25th pick in the NBA draft? So that's my thoughts on the Luka trade. Great move for the Lakers. AD was going to leave after LeBron left, so now you have your guy. After LeBron leaves, he's top 5 player in the NBA. He's going to be, if you're able to resign, which I think they will, he'll be there forever. He'll probably be there for the rest of his career. People want to play with Luka. Certain types of players that are good. It's ironic. Guys recognize that they would be good next to Luka and they want to go play for him. You wish people would have done that for LeBron when he was at his peak. More often. I mean, it did happen, but more often. It seems to happen all the time for Luka. So, yeah, I think that it's a great future move for the Lakers, despite the fact that they do, even though they're adding Luka, do seem to get a little worse from this trade in this very short term, just because so much uncertainty at the 5, a lack of real size outside of Mark Williams, who you can't trust to stay healthy. So all that stuff. And overall, just an A++ move for the Lakers. How the hell did you end up with Luka Doncic? So now we'll move on from the Luka trade. That one obviously really, really kickstarted everything. And we'll move on to De'Aaron Fox. I think everyone predicted this one, but I'll say it too. I predicted this. What a good move for the Spurs. They're going to really have to compete hard still to get into the play-in because it's not going to be simple. And as much as I love the Fox addition, he's going to resign there. I think it would be so great if the Spurs somehow made it to the postseason because you would learn, okay, this guy can be on the team in the future. This guy can't be because he's just too easy to scheme against in a 7-game series. So, and it also just gives guys like Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell and even De'Aaron Fox too, the ability to learn more playoff basketball and what that sort of 7-game series where your opponent is just locking into you and you only just to sort of play and learn in that environment. So in order to get there, they'll need the Suns to collapse. And right now they're 2 games behind the Suns. And with the Suns being maybe the biggest losers at the deadline, I think that's pretty good. If you're the Spurs, we'll start with okay. So Clippers are at the top of the playing teams, and the Spurs are 4.5 games back of them. I don't think they're catching the Clippers. Okay, Mavericks. They're 3 games behind the Mavericks. I don't think they're catching the Mavericks. So there's that. Then there's the Suns. I just told you I think they could catch the Suns. And then you have the Kings, the Warriors, both a game and a half ahead of the Spurs. The Kings did a decent job this deadline, in my opinion, despite the fact that they had to give up Fox. I thought they got pieces back that helped them continue to win. So it's going to be difficult to pass the Kings. And then the Warriors, obviously adding Jimmy Butler. Unless Jimmy Butler causes major locker room issues, I think that the Warriors will start to win more after adding Butler, though there might be some growing pains to that. And if we look at trends, the Spurs have been 3-7 in their last 10 games, and the rest of those teams ahead of them aren't as bad in their last 10. And then behind the Spurs, nobody is coming to catch you, despite the fact that I guess the Trailblazers have won 9 of their last 10, which is incredible. And shout out to Scoot Henderson. He's been pretty darn good. And Toumani Camara, despite the fact that he played pretty bad last night. Blazers on a good run. But yeah, the Spurs, they have competition ahead of them. I don't know. Now, the more I look at it with the moves the Kings made, the Jimmy Butler addition to the Warriors, I think the only hope for the Spurs is that the Suns fall catastrophically, which is going to be kind of crazy considering they employ Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Well, I guess that's it. I mean, Bradley Beal's obviously there, but most expensive 6th man in the world. I do like Nick Richards, but he hasn't been great offensively for them. I like Tyus Jones, but he's just like a fantasy basketball player. He's not like a real life needle mover. So I don't know. I don't know how the Suns find a way to coast. I don't know if the Suns can coast into the play-in. And now we'll get over. Okay. So yeah, the Spurs got Jordan McLaughlin as well in that one. Who cares? So for those Kings, in this De'Aaron Fox trade, they got back Zach LaVine, who I thought was the perfect addition for De'Aaron Fox. During this stretch that the Kings have been on, most De'Aaron Fox seems to have been checked out. I'm talking about the Kings, right? They won 11 of 12 or 10 of 11 under Doug Christie, their new head coach, in place of Mike Brown. They were running the Kings were running the offense through Malik Monk as the starting point guard and sort of using De'Aaron Fox as this off-ball shooter. Fox just seemed to be sort of checked out on that. And Fox, if you know him, not a bad 3-point shooter, but not like the guy that you're like, okay, you catch and shoot this 5 times a game or more. But that's where most of his points during this stretch were coming from, and he was only averaging 16 points a game during that stretch. So he really wasn't doing much for the Kings during their really good stretch as of late. So you get back a guy in Zach LaVine who's top 10, top 5 percentile in the NBA on catch and shoot threes, on pull up threes. He's been absolutely amazing off the ball this season, which he had to be because the Bulls just employ so many point guards. So I think he's just a perfect fill-in for De'Aaron Fox going forward for the rest of the season. I do think Fox is a better player. I do think Fox is a better defender. I do think Fox is a better playmaker. But Zach LaVine's a better shooter. He's a better pull-up shooter. He's a better catch-and-shoot shooter, right? So I think that works well for the Kings. I think that's a good start to keep your offense afloat. Now, at the time of this trade, you're still worried about their size. If Sabonis isn't on the floor, they're not rebounding the basketball. It's just simple as that, sort of like Rhode Island and David Fuchs. Pretty much it's the exact same scenario. They're just not rebounding the ball if Sabonis isn't on the floor. The Kings also got a Hornets first-round pick, not going to convert, so that's 2 second-rounders. A Spurs, I think, unprotected first-round pick in 2027. That's going to be in the 20s. Timberwolves, 2031 first. I don't know if there's protections on that, but that is an interesting pick. And then 3 seconds, 2 from the Bulls, 1 from the Nuggets. And then the Bulls get Zach Collins, who they wanted to flip. Okay, what? Kevin Huerter, not good. They wanted to flip him, having the worst year of his career. Why would you add another small wing / guard? And then Trey Jones, just their 8th point guard on the roster. What are you doing? And then On top of it all off, you got a first-round pick. Not just any first-round pick, your own first-round pick back. And if you had just made this trade and not gotten your own first back, you probably would have sucked enough for the rest of the season, especially if you were able to get rid of Vooch to get your first-round pick anyways, because it was top 7 protected. So just another abysmal, awful, garbage, what are we doing trade from the Chicago Bulls. But hey, at least you got off of Zach LaVine's contract. And who knows, maybe one of those guys becomes a piece for the Bulls. But I doubt it. The rumor had it they wanted to trade all 3 guys after they made that trade. But nobody else was going to be like, yeah, let me call up the Bulls for Trey Jones or Zach Collins. I don't know. Moving on, Hornets pick swap with the Thunder. I hate you, Thunder. Why are you just taking on more picks? Like I said, Caleb Martin to the Mavericks. I didn't hate this one as much as other people seem to have hated it. Quentin Grimes, I thought was decent pickup for the Sixers, and they get off of the Caleb Martin contract, which I guess some people didn't like, but you're only giving them like $7 million a year. So I'm not losing sleep over if I'm either team. Tice traded to the Thunder for another pick, and the Pelicans got money back. And I called this one, by the way. This was a niche trade I did call. Now, I didn't say it'd go to the Thunder, but I did say Pelicans are going to dump a random player from their roster. Now, he's not random to me because I'm a Celtics fan, plus I'm an RAFC fan. And if you know ball, you know that Daniel Tice is a minority stakeholder in RIFC. But he got waived today anyway, so the Thunder just picked up a random second-round pick for some cash, and the Pelicans get back below the apron, which they've never been above. Then here is a second Kings trade. They flip City Sissoko, something like that. Sorry. And 2 future second-round picks that haven't been named yet. Like what year? For Jonas Valanciunas. I love this trade. Now, the Kings seem to have a thing for Lithuanian big men, but hey, good for the Kings. I think this gives them more size in the front court. You'll be able to play, Valanciunas just in place of Sabonis. When Sabonis comes off the floor, now he doesn't do a lot of good things that Sabonis does do, but what he does do as good or nearly as good as Sabonis' rebound. He's a fantastic rebounder. If you remember this offseason, LeBron was willing to take a $20 million pay cut to get Valanciunas. He was on a short list of players that LeBron wanted. So if Lee GM thinks it's a good move, then it's probably a good move. And so I thought it was a good ad for the Kings. And going back to the Spurs, that's another guy that is going to make it more difficult for you to climb over the top of a team like Sacramento. So good job on Sacramento's part. Thought they did a good job this deadline. Fox was not going to come back. The only way Fox was going to come back to Sacramento is if he was an All-NBA player. At best, would have been All-NBA third team. But given the fact that he didn't make the All-Star game, despite the fact that I thought he had an argument to be a starter, that's another talking point for another day, even though that's past, so I guess it's never going to happen. He's not going to be an All-NBA player, even if he did deserve it. He just plays in Sacramento. It's not going to happen. So he wouldn't be eligible for the Supermax. So Sacramento couldn't have given it to him. So he wouldn't have been taking a crazy pay cut to go somewhere else this offseason. People thought he was going to want to do that. Seemed like people internally thought he was going to want to do that. And there's going to be more details coming out about that later on. I guess that's what I've seen on Twitter. So yeah, good on the Kings. Get off a guy that did a lot to your franchise and did a lot for you. I mean, he's probably a top 4, top 3 player ever in Kings history, but you got a good haul back for giving them up. Two firsts, plenty of seconds that you can move around, and good players that are going to help you and do what you want to do right now. So good job on the Kings. I give the Kings a B+, maybe an A for their deadline actions, despite the fact that they gave up De'Aaron Fox. Celtics trade Springer to the Rockets. I liked this move at the time for the Celtics because it helped them get below or helped them save $15 million in cap, and then they did a good job of adding wing depth and going out and signing Torrey Craig. Shout out Torrey Craig. He's with Meg Thee Stallion, so that means Meg Thee Stallion, you are now a Boston Celtics fan. Can't wait to see her courtside at the Celtics games. It's so funny. I listen to all these podcasts of guys from the Chicago area who always talk about how they would see Torrey Craig at local high school games. I don't think he'll be popping out to local Boston games because high school ball just ain't the same here as it is in Chicago. But hey, who knows? Maybe we'll see Meg Thee Stallion at some like random academy game up in Boston. Who knows? But good move for the Celtics. Another Brad Stevens masterclass right there. Wizards get Reggie Jackson for Jared Butler. I don't care. Cody Zeller to the Rockets. I like Jock Landale. Are you trying to replace Jock Landale? I don't really like it. Draft rights to Alpha Kaba. Who is that? Okay. Pacers deal Wiseman to the Raptors. I thought this meant that maybe the Raptors were going to move Jakob Poeltl. That didn't happen, so I don't get it. But I do get it for the Pacers. You save some cap space. Pistons land KJ Martin. I like this move. I think KJ Martin provides more defense for a team and another just – he might not play come postseason, but it just gives you another option on that team when you do make the playoffs. You don't know what this team's going to look like in the playoffs. You don't know what the rotation's going to look like. You don't know how defensive matchups are going to look like. So it doesn't hurt to give up cash when you have plenty of it to go out and say, hey, we're going to bring on a guy and a couple of second-round picks, including a 2031 second from the Mavs. That might be a 31st overall pick. I can't, but who knows? Yeah, I like that move for the Pistons. Suns deal Nurkic to the Hornets. This is so funny to me. And shout out Ryan Palillo. I already gave him one shout out on this pod, but he and I have we've been talking trash about Nurkic for a minute. I don't like Yusuf Nurkic. He's a very niche player. I remember when the Suns added him at the beginning of the KD era that I was like, what a weird ad. I don't really get that one. And some burner account came after my neck, and I tried to go back and find it, but the guy deleted his account. She's got a really weird fan base, Nurkic does. But Nurkic earlier in the season was just – it felt like a lot of the Suns' games sort of relied on Nurkic to be great, and when he wasn't, they just lost. And there was one game in particular where you got Sun, embarrassed, punked, pants, just difficult to watch game against the Hornets and Nick Richards. Of course, Mark Williams didn't play in that game. Sorry, Lakers fans. Nick Richards just sunned him so bad that the Suns said, hey, called up the Hornets, said, hey, don't let him leave the city. He's coming over here. And they didn't give up Nurkic at the time, but Nurkic just went to the bench. He stopped playing. It was as simple as that. Even after that Suns Hornets game, minutes were immediately like they started Mason Plumlee in the year 2025 over him. Like that's how bad it got. And then slowly started seeing his minutes reduce. And I don't know if he got a DNP before Nick Richards got there, but they started getting DNPs once Richards did get there. So they ship him away, and in return they got Cody Martin and Micic. I don't think Micic is good. Cody Martin, I do like that ad that does give the Suns more defense when the only good defender on their team was Ryan Dunn, and Dunn has no offensive value unless he gets hot from three, which doesn't happen very often. So good on the Suns. I didn't really realize they made some moves around the edges like that. I did know they realized Nurkic. I didn't know the return until now. I don't know if that really makes me feel any different, though. Cody Martin and Micic, I don't feel different about what I said earlier in terms of them coasting through the play-in or to the play-in if they make it, or if they somehow lose their position to a team like the Warriors. The Warriors and the Spurs both aren't in the play-in as of now, so one of those two teams will have to make that jump. A team like the Suns is the only team I can really see in the West taking that fall. Maybe the Kings do. Maybe they take that fall, but you can tell by what I've said today that I would be surprised if they took that fall. Next trade, the Pistons acquire Dennis Schroeder and Lindy Waters and a future second-round pick. The Jazz got KJ Martin in this one. So I'm an idiot. I guess the Pistons don't actually have KJ Martin. Instead, it's Lindy Waters, who's I think a decent defender. I don't really know anything about him. I don't watch too much Warriors. And then Dennis Schroeder. I don't hate it. Dennis Schroeder, earlier this year was really, really, really good with the Nets. That pick and roll action with Nick Claxton was just disgusting. He wasn't really like that with the Warriors, which why would he be? They don't run pick and rolls like that. So, like, what was the thought? I didn't get the thought process on that originally. But, hey, here in Detroit, you're going to have Jalen Duren to run the pick and roll with. So, I do think he'll be a bit better. And I'd rather have the ball in his hand come the postseason rather than Marcus Sasser. As much as I do really like Marcus Sasser basketball, I don't think he should really be playing for you come postseason. And then the Raptors land PJ Tucker. If you don't know, PJ Tucker is still in the NBA, getting paid $10 million this year, despite the fact that I don't think he's reported to a single practice, a single team meeting, a single anything for the Clippers, who moved him earlier to the Jazz for Eubanks before the deadline really got started. That move was kind of irrelevant. And now he gets dealt again just for salary compensation. And then Davion Mitchell from the Raptors to the Heat. I do like that for the Heat. Davion Mitchell is a decent defender. You can stick him on a point of attack, especially if it's a smaller guard running the point for the other team. And he'll give you a lot of effort, and the offense will be here and there. But again, another addition around the margins for a team that's going to be in the postseason. So I don't hate it. Then the Bucks got Kevin Porter Jr. for Beauchamp. I like this move. Kevin Porter Jr., controversial player, had a lot of issues last year or 2 years ago, arrested on domestic violence charges that his girlfriend came out and said didn't happen, even though the cops came and arrested him and there was evidence of it. It was a really dirty situation. I'm not going to sit here and talk about it. I know earlier on the pod I mentioned he who shall not be named on the Hornets. That's a lot different, in my opinion. There are restraining orders. There have been time spent behind bars, picture, video evidence, children involved in that case. This one was a little bit different for KPJ. Thought he was decent this year with the Clippers. Again, he's still playing that AAU style of ball. Do not expect defense from him. But, hey, he'll cook your best defender. It's kind of crazy the bag that kid has. But, again, with the baggage surrounding him, sometimes you see guys like Jaylen Brown who did date that lady who, disputed those claims and was with KPJ at the time. You see guys like him kind of target KPJ for what they've done, and I think that's a valiant thing to do. I wish more people would do that to, again, he who should not be named on the Hornets. So really interesting, but I do think for the Bucks, that really gives you a good offensive punch off the bench. I'd rather have him than Pat Connaughton, who they seem to couldn't be able to move. They tried to trade him this deadline. Him and Bobby Portis, I guess nobody really wanted those contracts, so they were stuck with them. So no more playing time. For what's his name, for Pat Connaughton. So decent move for the Bucks. And if you're the Clippers, I guess Beauchamp, he's fine. Gives you defense. You have plenty of offense. Hawks get Bogdanovich. Jeez, Justin. He's been awful this year. Just garbage. So I don't really get this one. The Hawks got Terrence Mann, the only NBA player I've actually ever talked to. Shout out Terrence Mann. I'm a big fan of Terrence Mann. Hasn't been good this season as much as I love him. Really, I saw him twice this summer very closely. And then Bones Highland. I'm a big fan of Bones Highland as well. I love his story. But again, these are two guys that are not contributors, not good. I trust that maybe Terrence Mann can do something, turn it around in Atlanta, considering how much he'll be playing. For Bones Highlands, God knows what's going on with him, and there's so much guard play in Atlanta. I don't think he'll really play that much. But yeah, that one's just like we're just scrolling past it. Then we get the Kuzma trade. I talked about it last podcast. I thought a contender should trade for Kuzma. I was right. We see the Bucks do it. They give up on Chris Middleton, a guy who's been there the whole time. And it makes sense. Chris Middleton is fresh off 2 ankle procedures, was playing limited minutes, and while he was efficient in those minutes, he simply could not defend. Wasn't the playmaker he was before. Very clearly still recovering from those operations, and at his age, you just don't think he'll ever be the same again. As for Kyle Kuzma, as long as he doesn't step on toes, as long as he's not chucking up garbage shots, and he plays within his role, which I think he can do, I think it's a fantastic add for the Bucks. I think he can do a lot of things that you want him to do. I think he'll step in place of where Bobby Portis is and be much better than what Bobby Portis was. So yeah, we see the Bucks get Kyle Kuzma and Kevin Porter Jr., two very interesting basketball players, two very interesting characters, but they're able to place them ahead of a Bobby Portis and a Pat Connaughton to sort of shore up that rotation. So I think that's a good move for the Bucks. They also got Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Jericho Sims. Sims provides more depth at the center position. I like that move. And then as for Patrick Baldwin Jr., who's the one that says it? Is it Stephen A. Smith that goes, who? Yeah. Who? I don't know. Wizards got Chris Middleton back, which I talked about. AJ Johnson back, which is really interesting to me because AJ Johnson at the time of his draft pick, played in Australia, the NBL. Awesome. Love that. It was surprising that he went in the first round. He was a very raw prospect. When the Bucks took him, everybody was shocked because everyone thought they were going to take a win-now player, not a guy that was a total project. He's dropped 18 points the other night in garbage time. It's a good showing. He's done pretty well in the G League. Now the Wizards have 4 first-round picks from this past year's draft. Sarr, Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, and now AJ Johnson. So I like what the Wizards are doing. They also added Marcus Smart. They didn't buy either him or Middleton out. So I think that we're going to see sort of a player coach role from Smart and Middleton, two really well respected guys who've done a lot of really good things in their career, and they're going to be able to coach up, in my opinion, a pretty decent young core in Washington. So to the one Washington fan, I know I doubt you listen to this, but good for your team. I'm pretty happy for you guys. Then the Knicks get DeLon Wright. Okay, like I'd rather have Tyler Kolek play over DeLon Wright, but all right, who cares? And they also got draft rights to a random international player. Again, who cares? I've already talked about the Mark Williams trade. And I'm going to skip that one because I think this. Okay, I see three more trades that I actually want to talk about. And we're going to start, or the two more trades. Three trades. And we'll start with the easiest one to talk about. Raptors buy low on Brandon Ingram. Ingram was not going to resign this offseason. Pelicans really should have moved on from him before the season started. He hasn't played as of late. And in his place, Trey Murphy averaged like 38 points over a 3-game stretch where in one of those games he embarrassed the Celtics. Celtics still won, but he played fantastic. So Trey Murphy should be starting. So good that he's going to be starting the rest of the season. And we'll see. I don't really know if I like it for the Raptors. Pelicans, good job. Pelicans got Bruce Brown back. Contract is up at the end of this year. Kelly Olynyk, thought the Warriors should have gone and got him. A first-round pick with no year attached to it, so I don't know what year that pick will be attached to, but I like it. And a second-round pick. Again, I like it. All for an expiring guy that, if you're the Raptors, I get that you like to buy low on players, but I don't really know about this one. I think the spacing is funky. If you have a lineup of Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, and Jakob Poeltl. I think it's a funky spacing lineup. His contract also is expiring, as I've mentioned a handful of times. You don't know if he's going to resign, but you still gave up a first-round pick. So I don't really like that, giving up a pick that valuable for a guy you don't know if he's going to come back. But if it all works out and Brandon Ingram does decide to stay in Toronto, outside of the issues with the spacing, if someone out of those group of guys, it won't be Poeltl. If one of those three guys, Barrett, Ingram, well, okay, it's not going to be Ingram. It's probably going to be, is it Barrett or Quickly, or maybe you bring in somebody else. If they're able to space the floor well, I do not mind that core, but at the same time, this is a team that is going to be a perennial play-in team. I saw even a tweet that said that they're the first ever super play-in team, which I thought was funny. They're really expensive for how bad they are. Oh my God, I forgot about Scotty Barnes. Oh my God, yeah, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Poeltl. Spacing, not good. Who's going to step up from three? Probably none of them. So yeah, I don't like the spacing. I don't like how expensive this team is for how bad it has been. I don't like giving up a first-round pick for a guy you don't know if he's going to resign. But their GM, blanking on his name right now, we know he likes to buy low on guys. Doesn't always work out, but when it does, it ended up with Kawhi in the championship. Obviously, this is the same kind of move, and it's not going to happen that way. But who knows? It could be a good move for the Raptors, but I really doubt it. Pelicans, I like it. You'll be able to get off that money really quickly, the guys that you acquired, and you got some draft compensation in return. Now we're going to move on to the Cavs getting DeAndre Hunter. I like this one for both teams, kind of. If you're the Hawks, you get back Karis LeVert and George Niang. I'm a big George Niang hater, mostly because of what he did to Jaylen Brown. If you don't remember, playoff game, Celtics, Sixers, Jaylen Brown, corner three, hits it, turns around, taunts the bench. That's a very normal thing to happen in basketball, happens at the high school level. And George Niang, for whatever reason, reaches out and grabs Brown's knee as he runs back on defense, starts a fight, punk move. I've always thought George Niang is a punk. Honestly, he's never going to listen to this. I'm very happy to see him go to the Hawks and watch him rot. Sorry, just had to be said. Karis LeVert, I feel bad for him. I'm a big Karis LeVert guy. I was a big fan of that D'Lo, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie Nets team years back before they got the big three. And we all remember when he was traded to the Pacers, I believe they discovered he had cancer because of his physical. And it was a really good story about how he beat it and all of that. So I like Karis LeVert, and I thought he could kind of do a lot of different things for the Cavs, but at the same time, he also had overlapping skill sets to a certain degree with guys like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. So I get, getting off of him, allowing the salaries to match with DeAndre Hunter. And now, in terms of DeAndre Hunter, I like it for the Cavs. You're adding more shooting. I would have rather seen them go get somebody more trustworthy, like a Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson isn't the same defender as DeAndre Hunter. Cam Johnson probably would have costed you more, but I can sort of trust Cam Johnson to stay healthy more than I can trust DeAndre Hunter to stay healthy. But DeAndre Hunter, like I just said, a better defender than Cam Johnson, probably cheaper too. My issue with DeAndre Hunter, like I just mentioned, I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. He's also just having an amazing season. But one of the best. If it wasn't for the likes of Ahmed, although I don't think he'll qualify for the award by the end of the year, or Peyton Pritchard, I don't even know if he'll win it at this point. DeAndre Hunter is probably Sixth Man of the Year, and he might still win it now. He might win it more now just because he's going to be playing it for one of the best teams in the league, right? So I like that. I like adding a player who's having that type of year, but that's just the thing. He's having that type of year. He hasn't done this in the past. In the past, he's dealt with injury issues. In the past, he hasn't shot as consistently as he has this season. So it's all really just odd to me in that regard, going in on a guy who you just don't know if this is real or not. But if it is real, this is a fantastic ad. I think that teams like the Cavs, and I think the Thunder should have done this, just go and get richer. And I think the Thunder, this applies to the Thunder too, directly. When you have so many assets like these teams do, and you're already contending, and you've already made the postseason once before, and you know who your guys are, and you know what your rotation looks like, go be greedy, right? Go out and go get a guy that is going to help you immensely, like a DeAndre Hunter, I guess, or like a Cam Johnson. Go out and go at those guys because, who knows if you'll get another chance like you're having this year. I mean, we do know that, those guys will be back. They're under contract, but the way things are shaping up, you know what I mean? So regardless, that was a good ad for the Cavs. I thought you didn't have to give up too much. I mean, I don't think the Hawks are going to get any advantage out of the pick swaps because I think the Cavs will still have a worse pick those years. And then 3 second-round picks. I'm okay giving up 3 seconds for DeAndre Hunter, swapping him out with Karis LeVert, and getting off George Niang. So good move for the Cavs. And now the final trade, the trade we've been waiting for months. A trade that has watched its value depreciate just for time and time again. A guy we saw get suspended 3 different times by his own organization. Jimmy Butler on the moves. What did the Suns give up? The Suns didn't give up anything. The Suns gave up nothing because the Suns didn't get Jimmy Butler. After all this time, after Jimmy Butler wearing orange and purple shoes on the floor, after Jimmy Butler saying he wanted to go to Phoenix and then saying he'll go to any team in the NBA, but then it comes out that he's actually denying trades from the Grizzlies, from this team, from that team, because he doesn't think those teams have come out and said and told him, like, we're not going to pay. We're not going to give you an extension. So he doesn't want to go there. After all of those issues, missing flights, missing practice, walking out on practice, the whole thing with the introduction, he looks lame, he doesn't care, he's not playing well. All of that depreciates his value, and at the end of the day, he ends up going to the Warriors. And I think this was a good thing for the Warriors. The Warriors needed to add somebody. They should be adding. You have Curry. It would be a crime to not try and get Curry. I don't think we expect him to compete for a finals, but at least try, pretend to try, right? I mean, he deserves it. He really, really does deserve it, and I'd hate to see him have to go to a different team to try and get it. So you do a good thing. You go out and get Jimmy Butler. You also got 2 second-round picks in cash. You send away Kyle Anderson. Who cares? You give up Andrew Wiggins. This one is sad. Andrew Wiggins has been through a lot since joining the Warriors. If it wasn't for Andrew Wiggins, the Warriors don't win the finals in 22. Andrew Wiggins played clamps on Jason Tatum in that series. It was absolutely fantastic. So it's sad to see Andrew Wiggins go, but I think Andrew Wiggins will fit perfectly into Heat culture. He's not having his best season, but I still think he's a guy who is just willing to accept any role that you give him. Obviously, he probably wants to play, and he's obviously going to play plenty with the Heat. So I think he'll fit in just fine. I think he'll do whatever they ask of him, plays good defense, he can score. So I think it's a good ad for the Heat. That plus the Davion Mitchell ad I thought was good for the Heat. So good job on the Heat side. You get a protected first-round pick, which you should get this season. So you get a first-round pick, which the Heat always nail, whether it's Khalil Ware, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo. Who's the guy whose name? Nikola You uh you guys know who I'm talking about. The white four. I think he wears number 5 on the Heat. Nicola. Whatever. That power forward. They nail all those late draft picks. So good job getting a first round pick this year. Davion Mitchell, like I mentioned earlier, good defense. Offense is spotty, but okay. Kyle Anderson, he'll have depth. Who cares? And then Andrew Wiggins, good ad. And we see the Jazz get in on this. They got Josh Richardson and KJ Martin. I don't really get either one of those ads with so many rookies that you have. They should just be playing. Like I don't want to see Josh Richardson cut into anyone. Like I think Isaiah Collier has been sort of breaking out as of late. I don't think his minutes should be reduced for Josh Richardson, as decent as Josh Richardson is. I would have rather seen Josh Richardson go to the Pistons. Then the Jazz also got another 2 seconds and cash. And then we saw the Pistons, like I mentioned earlier, Lindsey Water, Dennis Schroeder, Raptors that we already talked about. So that's it for the deadline. The last one on this, we already sort of talked about. Oh, I forgot. Kings also got Jake LaRavia. If you don't know who Jake LaRavia is, he's another random rotational player who somehow ends up being pretty darn good for the Grizzlies under, is it not Tony Jenkins? Michael? No, it's not Michael Jenkins. I think it begins with a T. I'm forgetting his name, but Coach Jenkins in Memphis does a great job with all those guys. Jake LaRavia plays good defense. He doesn't shoot a whole lot on volume, but he's an efficient shooter on low volume. Like I said, good defense. So good defense for a team that needed it. So yeah, great. Seems like a great deadline for the Kings, honestly. I'm going to have to talk to my little brother about it. He's a big De'Aaron Fox fan, and I don't know how much he'll stick around with the Kings, but he told me that he thought the Kings kind of lost. At least they lost the Fox trade, but I think at the end of the deadline, they ended up doing a pretty good job. But yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the deadline. I don't think there's any trades that we didn't talk about. I mean, Marvin Bagley and Johnny Davis, LOL, both joined the Grizzlies. Who cares? I mean, the Grizzlies do deal with enough injuries that we might see some Marvin Bagley minutes. Already talked about the Mark Williams trade. Talked about Bogdanovich. Probably didn't need to spend that much time on it. Even talked about PJ Tucker. I think we mentioned almost every single name that got traded. I think we did mention every single name that got traded, from the Cody Zellers and Reggie Jacksons, Jared Springers, the Valanciunas, to even the Lukas and Foxes and Zach LaVine. So yeah, that's the NBA trade deadline. I think the biggest winner is the Lakers because they got the best player. I think the Spurs are big winners. I think the Kings did pretty decent for what happened. I think the Heat got an okay return, despite the fact that wow, I'm blinking. That Jimmy Butler's value depreciated so much. And yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to mention. I'm looking at my little itinerary or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, Trey Murphy I mentioned, and then Blazers I mentioned, and then my final thing. Shout out Miles Turner, 8th year that Miles Turner has been on the trade block in trade rumors. Reported that they might trade him. I thought the Pacers might trade him again, or not trade him again. I thought they might trade him this time just because they're going to have a really hard time figuring out who to pay. At this point, to me, it seems like they might let Benedict Mathurin walk, which is interesting, and elect to re-sign Miles Turner. Miles Turner had a really funny Instagram story post, something like that, tweet, where he posted a picture of the Survivor logo. Survives again. I mean, that man's been surviving the trade deadline since Tim Duncan was in the NBA. So, shout out Miles Turner. And shout out to all of you who have listened to this point. We are an hour and 13 minutes in, about to be 14. So thank you so much. It was a longer one today. After this, I'm going to figure out how the heck to use my new editing software. I'm going to start using this thing called Movie Maker. Before, I've been using Premiere. The problem with Premiere is you can't extract audio only. And I'm not recording on 2 separate softwares at the same time. So the whole goal is that on Movie Maker, I'll be able to put this in, right, add the sound effects. Don't worry, we're not going to be doing that wave sound effect anymore. I didn't really like the way it came out, even though I still used it like a moron. We'll probably just go with some more basketball sound effects. But I'll be able to, this one I read, and it seems as though, and so if it doesn't end up happening, just know I tried, that I'll be able to extract the audio as its own file, upload it to Spotify separately. That way you don't have to look at my stupid face on Spotify or, and whatever issues come with videos on Spotify. And if you're on YouTube, you're awesome. So again, thank you so much to everyone who listens to this. Funny enough, URI's long distance running coach and cross country coach Brian Doyle. I saw him today at TLC Coffee, and he even mentioned to me that he had seen it on social media. I don't think he listened, but that's okay. Uh, just the fact that people are talking about it, it means a lot. It's just a personal. I had a friend of mine ask me what the goal of it is, and there's no goal. It's just a personal thing to have, and it's funny. A lot of people at URI seem to start one at the same time as me. Um, and a lot of friends that I have restarted old ones that they had. So it's just funny that it seems like all Rhode Island, all of the Harrington School, all the sports media is back on their podcast kick. But my goal is to not give it up ever. And so I love you guys. Thank you for listening.